You're listening to the North Star Bible School podcast. North Star is a one-year Bible program dedicated to helping young men and women build their life's foundation on Jesus Christ. Well, welcome to the North Star Bible School podcast. Today we have JJ with us. I don't know you by much more than JJ, but...
Yeah, so JJ Yount, it would way it's spelled would indicate that you would pronounce it Yount, but that's wrong. The big question I ask most people is if they can figure out what JJ actually stands for, because my actual name is Joseph George with a G, and last name starts with a Y. So then where does the JJ come from?
Right, and as far as I know, no one's figured it out yet. So
no, they wouldn't. They wouldn't, unless they knew the depths of my family history. They wouldn't know what it stands for, actually.
Yeah, but you're here this week teaching our Systematic Theology class number 3.
Number 3, yep.
Soteriology.
Mm-hmm. The Trinity, if you will.
Yeah. Fun week. So could you take a couple minutes and just tell us about yourself, where you come from, that kind of thing?
Sure, yeah. So I pretty native to the southeast side of the United States, the continental 48. And I grew up in Mississippi, currently live in Georgia, just north of Atlanta. I try to stay out of the city as much as possible. I'm much more of a wilderness kind of guy. But yeah, I grew up in Mississippi in the swamp. And when I say swamp, like literally the road that my parents' house is still on is called Sandy Bayou. Like they use like the swamp language, alligators and snapping turtles, the whole thing. Yep. Is there anything else you want, like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, like, how you became a pastor and what led you through all that early years in ministry.
Yeah. So what led me to be a pastor when I was a junior in high school, I felt a call into ministry. I now, being many years down the road from that time, that's the way I expressed it at the time. I had no clue really what it was. I just felt like a stirring, and I talked to my youth pastor, and my best friend was the pastor's son. So it was a typical story of like the pastor's son and one of the deacon's sons was like causing trouble in the church. It's kind of how that went. But felt that in my spirit and talked to my pastor and talked to my youth pastor, and they just kind of kept giving me like, well, just keep following whatever opportunity the Lord gives you. They knew that I was feeling called into ministry, but they never were like telling me they wanted me to discover that for myself. And so they just kept giving me like leadership opportunities to like teach, which they shouldn't have done. They let me and my best friend, who was the pastor's son, debate in front of the whole student ministry one time, like evolution versus creation, but they didn't like give us any guardrails. They were just like, hey, next week you're going to debate this. And we were like, okay. Or actually, no, we came with the idea. We were like, can we like debate this in front of the student ministry? And they were like, sure. They should not have let us do that. I, as a student pastor now, would not just let two students randomly show up in front of the student ministry and debate it. But they just kept giving us opportunity. And me and my best friend, Brian, ended up going into ministry, went to Christian University for undergrad, studied the Bible together, which was really fun. And then just kept following opportunity after opportunity as the Lord gave it to me. Started out, first church I was officially a youth pastor in, just little bitty country church in Bolton, Mississippi, middle of nowhere, cow fields next to the church, the whole thing. But it was great. It was a great time. I love the pastor that I served with there, and he gave me a lot of grace as a 19, 20-year-old guy trying to figure out ministry and leading students and all the crazy that involves in that. And then just from there, again, the Lord has just opened up different opportunities for me, and I've gotten to serve church in Texas and North Alabama, and now I'm in Georgia. It's kind of been the overall journey there. Just wherever the Lord leads is where I go.
Yeah, cool. And so now you're here. How did that happen?
Yeah. This place is awesome, by the way. Yeah, no, I'm here and super excited to be here and honored to be here. Everybody's so gracious. But about a year ago, I'm a part of a nonprofit ministry called Table for One, and our whole deal is advocacy for churches to do singles ministry really well, to actually reach single adults, because that population is growing in the U.S., not just like college kids, but like people are staying single longer. There's higher numbers of divorce even in the church, and so people are just in that sort of category of single a lot more today in the U.S. than they have been in the past, and churches often focus with just cause on like family ministry exclusively. And so our whole thing is advocacy for churches to reach singles, because they're missing part of their population if they're not doing that. And so Luke connected with our ministry, knowing that we worked with singles and young adults, and that's part of what this whole Bible school thing is for young adults, like college age,
Right.
young adults. And so we just, from my perspective, though, the guy who runs the ministry I'm a part of, PJ, just sent me an invite to a Zoom call and said, hey, I want you to be a part of this. And I was like, okay. And that was all I knew. That I didn't know this was about a school. I didn't know what it was about at all. And so I just hop on this Zoom call and I meet Luke. And then he kind of casts a vision for what they were doing here, like what they were starting with North Star. And I just immediately fell in love with the concept. Wasn't super familiar with the 1-year Bible school model. And so fell in love with that and sort of jokingly tossed out to him like, hey, if you need someone to come up and teach, I'll be glad to come. And then a couple weeks later, he extended an invitation graciously. And I couldn't have accepted faster. Like I was just excited I love to teach in general, like especially like young adults is my passion to teach. Like teenagers and college students is one of my like primary groups of engaging with and teaching. And I love wilderness, and I've always wanted to come to Alaska. So just a lot of different things aligned there to get me to where I am now. It's awesome.
Yeah. Cool. And how have you enjoyed teaching so far?
I've enjoyed it a lot. I don't know how much the students have enjoyed it. My teaching is a little less conventional in that I'm really trying to help students get in the scripture for themselves and sort of mine out the truths with my guidance over that. But I don't just like give it away. I don't just lecture it away. Not that those are bad models. Everybody learns differently, and so I figure there are a lot of guys who are doing sort of the traditional teaching model, and so I thought I would bring in something a little different for anybody who just learned a little differently, because I'm one that I learned through talking things out. I'm a verbal processor, and I love that concept of iron sharpening iron that the scriptures talk about. And so instead of sit and listen to me, I want to go, hey, as a group, let's dive into this pre-thought through path, but let you sort of dig in and kind of discover the path as we go, so that it becomes something you've learned and not just something you've heard. And so that's sort of my method. Whether it works or not, it's yet to be seen, I guess.
Yeah, sweet. Do you want to talk about the class some? How the week has gone so far?
Sure, yeah. So Soteriology is the main subject, the doctrine of salvation or the study of salvation. And so what we've been walking through, so Wayne Grudem, Systematic Theology, 2nd edition book is sort of our core textbook. Obviously the scriptures, the Bible, main textbook on that. But the school has set forth for their systematic classes using Wayne Grudem. So we have sort of structured it, not sort of actually, just structured it off of what he calls the Ordo Salutis. It's not just him, but that's what he's referencing there, the order of salvation. Mm-hmm. And just sort of walking through what I would call the subordinate doctrines. That doesn't mean they're less important, but they're just, soteriology is the overarching doctrine, the doctrine of salvation. And then under that are the subordinate categories of that, of justification, sanctification, perseverance, and election, and all those fun words that can be hotly debated. And we've had a couple of those moments this week in class, but I love those moments, and even had students push back against me on things that I'm completely fine in those moments. Even if a student proves me wrong, then great, I was wrong, and I'll correct myself in that. But the ultimate goal is for us to like iron sharpen iron again, to talk through those topics, but more importantly than just us talk through and logic our own way to a decision, we want to see what scripture has to say about that. So we've probably looked at 60 to 70 passages, it feels like this week so far. Like we've been through a lot of scripture.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
in this, and that's my whole goal. Is like it can be overwhelming, I guess, at times, because you're like, JJ, we're talking about one thing, but you've given us 15 passages to look at. But the beauty of scripture is all of it ultimately speaks toward God's plan of redemption and rescue, salvation and renewal of his creation, ultimately in our salvation, his people, right? And so I want us to see not just what specific verses say, but also how they harmonize and work together to teach us the deep truths of what happens in a moment in salvation, but the depths of what the work God actually does in that moment of salvation. To us, in a linear time sense, it's literally just the blink of an eye. You go from death to life, but there's a lot that happens in that process, right? Of being chosen, of being called out, of being justified, and then being adopted, and all of that stuff just happens so instantaneously, and we look past it sometimes. And so when you really dig into those separate doctrines, you get a better understanding and a better appreciation of salvation in general, the work that God does in our hearts and in our lives. So It's been fun.
Yeah. So I'm sure as a youth pastor still, you have a pretty busy schedule. I mean, why take the time out of your busy schedule, youth pastoring, to come up and teach these students up here?
Yeah, so first off, it's Alaska, and I find that intriguing, the last frontier, as they say, and so wanted to come up and just like experience Alaska a little bit selfishly. But as I mentioned earlier, like I love teaching, and I love teaching young adults, and so given the opportunity, I think no matter where the location is, if given an opportunity that fits within my busy schedule, being a dad and a pastor and stuff, I would take that every time, regardless of location, because my passion is teaching young adults and helping them engage with Scripture for themselves in that. And so I wouldn't want to be anywhere else this week, honestly, when given the opportunity. I don't know why. For me, it was a no-brainer option just because of my passion. I could see where others might be an inconvenience. And in the church that I'm at in Georgia is very gracious. I didn't have to take a week of vacation. This is a week of ministry in their mind. And so even though it's not directly for that church, they see it as working for the global church and growing the kingdom. And so they're very gracious in that. And so it didn't take away from my family's vacation time, though my wife was able to come along with me, which was incredible that she gets to come on. Very thankful for North Star and Mark and Luke and for extending that invitation to her as well. But for me, yeah, it's a no-brainer to be a part of something like this, to be a part of teaching young adults the deep truths of Scripture.
Yeah. And what has been a highlight of your week so far?
In the classroom, the highlight has been the conversations. Like, some groups are conversational and some groups are not. And this group this week has been very conversational. I think they've taken to the discussion model really well, and I appreciate that, because otherwise it's just me staring at people. I'll ask a question and they just stare back at me, sort of thing. But this week has been the highlight has really been really good discussions we've had in small groups and then large groups in the classroom. And then outside the classroom, I love fishing, and so I got to catch a trout ice fishing this week, which was fun. Depending on what time of year I guess you come, you don't get that opportunity always, but that's a first for me that I got to ice fish and then I actually caught a trout. That was awesome. So that's a highlight too.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. What's been your favorite meal so far?
Oh, favorite meal so far. Well, today, whatever day this is releasing, not this exact day, but today that we're recording this, the trout that I caught, Mark actually cooked it up for some of us to try it. And so we had chili with a side of trout. Not normally what you would think, but it was cool to like actually eat the trout that I caught. And so that was good. The enchilada night that they had was also really good. Yeah, there's some really good enchiladas. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great food. What is a pastime that you enjoy?
Okay, so yeah, hobbies, pastimes. I am actually a man of many hobbies. I've not talked a ton about all of this because we've wanted to dive into Scripture in the classroom, but I love hobbies. The ones that stand the test of time have been hunting and fishing, outdoors stuff, but I do woodworking. Coffee is a passion of mine, not just drinking it, but like roasting it and brewing it and all of that has been a passion of mine. But the stuff that I continually come back to time and time again are outdoors. So hunting, like whitetail and dove and things like that. And then in Georgia, I would hunt anything I'm allowed to hunt. But around where I'm at in the Southeast, whitetail is sort of the big primary thing that I hunt. And then fishing, any kind of fishing I can get my hands on. I love doing that. And so those are the, when I get time outside of being a husband, father, and pastor, which is very limited time, that's usually what I go toward. Yeah.
Cool. Before we move on to our book recommendations, do you have anything else?
I don't know. I guess the main thing would be like if you're listening and you're just kind of getting introduced to what this is, like the 1-year Bible school, I think you should keep diving in and researching and seeing what's here. I think this is something that could spark revival in our nation and the world. I think it's something that just continually pushes back against biblical illiteracy. And I think it's just worthwhile for students to get outside of the home a little bit, because here not only are you in class, but you're also given responsibility. You're learning to be away from home, and there's a lot of wins in general for something like this. So if you're listening, you're on the fence, or you're not familiar with this concept, I just encourage you to dive in. And if you're listening and you are a part of it, and maybe your kids here has been here, keep supporting, keep sharing the word about what's going on here, and start, as Mark says, a 1-year Bible school revolution.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we've talked about a lot here, is that we just love for there to be a revival across the nation of 1-year Bible schools, specifically for people just coming out of high school, or at college age, just because it's a great time in your life to take a year aside and just get really grounded in your faith. So it's a really great option.
That's really good. Yeah, this place is awesome.
Yeah. So now I guess we'll move into our recommended resources. So 2 questions.
Okay.
The first one is thinking back to early years of ministry, or it could be like seminary or school or something like that.
Sure.
Early years, what is a book that really helped you, or maybe just that you really enjoyed?
You know, what's interesting is one of the books in my college years, so the 18 to 24 timeframe, that really helped spur on spiritual growth for me and like my passion for studying the Bible and like the details of being a Christian is C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. And what I find interesting about that is I'm like 20 something years later coming back to it and rereading it with the lens of where I am in life now. And it's still just as like powerful and convicting of like how simple yet deep he makes Christianity for someone who might be skeptical, or even a Christian who doesn't like understand like really the depths of what it means to be a Christian. And so that's probably been, not just in my college years, but just even in recent time, been a really formative book for me for sure. Yeah. And Lewis, C.S. Lewis is one of those that I feel like I have to reread paragraph after paragraph to understand what he's saying. And some of that's because of the like English being a little bit older, but also just like the richness of which he uses words.
Right. Like I could feel like you could read the same paragraph twice from him and still get something different out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I just finished reading Mere Christianity over winter break. It was great.
Yeah. That's cool.
So second book. In the last year, is there a book that you've really enjoyed or has been really helpful?
So a book recently that has been really helpful for me is actually a devotion. A guy named Jonathan Gibson has put out several different 30-day devotions that's real liturgical style. Say that real fast and it'll mess you up. But real liturgical style, which I don't experience a lot in the church that I'm a part of currently. Not that we're anti-liturgy. That's just not the style of like worship and devotion that we typically do. And so it's been refreshing. So the one that has been most impactful for me is called Be Thou My Vision, and it's just a 30-day, walks through some catechism stuff. There's some different prayers to read from some like former, I say former as in like they're past now, they're dead, like theologians and like Augustine and people like that, saints in the Catholic Church, you know. It's just interesting. And then just some scripture reading in that. And so you bring in the different prayers of heroes of the faith and scriptures and calls to worship and stuff like that. It's just been really refreshing for me. I did one in December that was specifically for Advent. O Come, Emmanuel is what it's called. So those have been really, really helpful for me.
Cool. Well, that's the end of our structured questions. So unless you have something else for our listeners.
No, I don't think I have anything else, unless inquiring minds have other questions about me. I again just say like you should be a part of what's going on here.
Well, you heard it here.
Taking your spiel.
So for all you out there, you want to stay tuned as we have more podcast episodes coming. And if you or anyone you know is interested in Bible education and discipleship in the beautiful mountains of Alaska, you can find more info at nsbs.life. That's nsbs.life.